Hello, this is the C.A. Quintet, November 23rd, 2023. This is the captain speaking. I'm the captain of a ship that sails only in my mind and occasionally goes off course. We spent a lot of time lately gathering material from many sources and put together the story of the creation of the Trip Thru Hell album. We had so much material that we are going to have to break this into parts, and this is part one. It comes from a June 7, 1996 radio interview with Mark Wheat on KFAI radio in Minnesota. This program was called the Local Sound Department, or LSD for short. This was just after our album was released on CD for the first time by Sunday's Music. We put a minimum of visuals in this video because it's really something more to listen to than to look at. But we wanted to get this part to you this Thanksgiving weekend so you would have something to listen to while standing in line at an airport or something. So it was a beautiful evening in June, and Mark and I had just had dinner at an outdoor cafe and spent the entire evening on the radio talking about the C.A. Quintet, our music, the music scene in Minnesota in the 1960s and 70s, and we especially focused on the creation of the Trip Thru Hell album and some of our other music. I guess you could say we talked about the trip that the C.A. Quintet took while making the trip. Sorry about that. During the evening, other original band members called in and joined the conversation, including Tom Pauling, who called in from Oklahoma. He was the only guitar player we ever had. And I recall one time someone asked Tom, who liked to have a drink or two at times, they asked Tom, "Why didn't you make any more albums?" Tom replied, "We didn't feel we needed to." That was Tom. Who knows? Maybe he was right. Here we go.
The local sound department, KFAI 90.3 and 106.7 FM, where, if you've been a regular listener, you will have heard some music by a band called the C.A. Quintet. Now, a little bit of background here. I first discovered this band on a greatest hits, or a compilation album called Money Music, and they were on there with a couple of other bands from the late 60s, early 70s. Liked what they did then, and then all of a sudden I saw their name on the side of a CD, and I thought they shouldn't have a CD out because they were back in the 60s. Well, what had happened is that Sunday's Records from New Jersey had discovered the band, or to be truthful, I guess the album had been legendary for all these 20 years, especially among collectors. I've heard of unplayable copies of this album, Trip Thru Hell by the C.A. Quintet, exchanging hands for several $100s at record collectors' sales. So it had always been there in the background, and Sunday's picked it up. We'll get to the details of that. They re-released it last year on CD, and what they did was they re-released a CD with the whole album, the singles, and a few outtakes. And I've been using track one, the Trip Thru Hell theme, as the bed of music that I read the local music news notes over. I didn't do it tonight because we'll get to it, and in fact we'll play it in its entirety, uninterrupted tonight, because we've got a very special guest in the studio with us tonight, Mr. Ken Irwin, who happens to be the captain of the C.A. Quintet. Now, Ken, where did you get the title captain from? Let's start there.
Oh, jeez. We can't even repeat that story. No, that's right off the bat. We're into things we can't talk about.
Well, how did you describe yourself? Vocalist, trumpeter, guitar player?
Oh man, that's a tough question. All of those things, I guess. Boy, I've never been asked how do I describe myself, because I normally don't describe myself. I don't know.
Well,
I guess just kind of a force that helps the team or the project or whatever carry on.
So back in the day, try and start at square one. Was it your idea to get a band together, or did friends come to you? How did it all begin with the C.A. Quintet?
No, I wanted to get a band together.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get a band together, and
you were how old?
Oh man, It's okay if I call you man?
Yeah.
Oh, thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you. That could date me a little bit, I don't know. 15?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're still in high school.
Oh, yeah.
You've learned to play, I guess, the guitar and the trumpet as you were a kid, right?
Yeah, I was a trumpet player, guitar player. Yeah.
And so what made you want to get a band together?
Oh, it just seemed exciting. I mean, it just seemed like
Right.
it was fun. It was something going to be fun to do, so we did it. Yeah.
And you practiced, and then you started playing out while you were still in high school.
Well, yeah, and we played little, basements and parties, and graduated onto school functions, and then eventually we got paid to play. I mean, that was a big step. I mean, to actually get paid to play. I mean, in the early days, we would have paid somebody just to let us play because we wanted to play so bad, But yeah, I remember we played a place called the Lion's Den. Some of your older listeners will remember this. In the early 70s, and we made this bet that we will put a certain amount of people in this place or we will play for free, and I think we fell short by about 5 people, so we played for free that night.
Wow. So can you remember your first paying gig? Or
My first paying gig, I think I'm still waiting for that one. No. I
it's not
think...
going to be tonight either, Ken. So.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought this was for money. No, we... yeah, I can remember. It was a high school thing where we actually got paid. This is what I mentioned to this. By the way, we had dinner tonight, okay?
Right.
I'd also like to say that I paid, okay? So let's get the record straight. I did because he's a wonderful individual, this gentleman is. Yeah, it was a high school gig. Yeah.
You've collected all this stuff. He's making out like he can't remember this. He's got 2 folders full of all this stuff, all the posters. And I mean, did you like consciously at that time think, I'm going to save all this stuff because one day it's going to be cool to look at and maybe someone will care?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I saved it for my kids and my grandkids, and my great-grandkids, or whatever comes along, because I can remember as a little... Maybe I'm being too sentimental here. Maybe this doesn't fit the role here, but
No,
as a little kid, crawling through my grandfolks' place and their attics and stuff and digging through their things, wow, this is really cool. I mean, these people, they don't know how cool this stuff is,
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'll just tuck all this stuff away in trunks, and someday it'll be there for generations as a beautiful little surprise.
What do you think of the retro stuff now? What do you think of like today's kids getting into bell-bottom trousers and flower power and all that stuff again?
I love it.
Yeah?
I love it. I mean, any expression and freedom is okay with me. I mean, I don't care when it happens or where it happens. Be free, enjoy yourself, have a good life. It's okay with me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Heady times, the 60s.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking more about what the scene was like in those days, because it was kind of different. You were kind of, I was trying to say at dinner, you kind of on that apex where you could be like employed as what they might call a show band then, and dress up in all the uniform, the matching suits and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little later on, you kind of, as you said, metamorphosed into something completely different. So
Yep.
we're going to be talking about that, but we want to get to a little bit of music, just in case you...
He's a doctor of philosophy. One look and he'll set you free. You want some advice? He's good to see. Well, but oh my. set you free.
Because we've got a special guest to talk to for a couple of hours. It's Ken Owen from the C.A. Quintet, and we just heard them doing Doctor of Philosophy. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get you in here, Ken, is to try and get kind of a comparison of what the scene was like as compared to what it's like now. If, I don't know, when you were playing as a band, were you aware, first of all, that others were doing it? Anything similar to you in town, or were you kind of out on your own there?
Boy, tough question. Well, I think we were kind of unique. I mean, we didn't really pay too much attention to what other people were doing around us. We just kind of did our own thing, and as long as we made enough money to keep on rolling, we were okay, and be creative.
Did you hang out together? I mean, did the bands hang out together? You know.
Yeah, well, we knew other
whatever.
people from other bands because we play a lot of gigs together, you know,
Right.
and there'd be 2-3 bands. We get to know each other, but there wasn't a lot of. Well, we were all too busy. We're just
Yeah.
too busy. I mean, bands in those days were busy.
Really?
We were
Give us a
busy.
rundown. I mean, how many gigs were you playing a week?
Well,
at that time?
sometimes when we get rolling, we play every night of the week.
Really?
Oh yeah, but and a lot of bands were. It was a busy time in the Twin Cities. It was very busy.
So that was just playing in and around the Twin Cities? I mean,
Well, the Midwest. We'd
Yeah.
play colleges and high schools and well, I you know, for lack of bars, we play bars
right.
and
And there was a kind of network of companies who were booking bands regularly for that, so there was just a lot of work to be had, and you could kind of employ yourself as a working musician, right?
the local
Good.
band scene was really hot. I you know, thinking back on it, I don't think the national band scene was. I mean, we didn't have a lot of what you call national bands coming in here. It was
Right.
the local bands dominated in those days, and there were a lot of really wonderful bands. We used to go out when we get a night off, go see the other bands.
Mm-hmm. Some of
And-
your favorites then? Can you remember?
Absolutely, no question. There's nobody in this audience that wouldn't argue with me, or would argue with me. Well, maybe they would. I don't know.
There's always going to be someone.
Everybody's
who
going to
likes-
argue with you somewhere. But Gypsy or the Underbeats were absolutely fabulous.
Mhm.
Fabulous.
What about some of the names that have survived? I got some Electras. Were they? the
Electras
same
were
time
great.
as you?
I knew the Electras well. I knew a band called the Tabs, which I think is pretty big, even with people in this era. I knew the Tabs very well. Dan Rinaldi and in fact Rick Johnson, who played drums with us, played with them for quite some time. Yeah, they were kind of like the Rolling Stones of this era, the Bad Boys, but they were a good group.
Were the Trashmen in the same era as you? or was it
Trashmen
early?
were just a little bit ahead of us, and they were more into the '50s set, more into the yeah, a little more
Sound thing.
commercial, yeah.
Right.
But obviously very successful.
Did their success kind of have an influence on you because people started looking for other people to come out of the Midwest
No,
at the same time?
no, they had no influence on us. We were really kind of off on our own.
Mhm.
We-
You said you didn't feel at the time that it was a disadvantage being in Minneapolis.
No, I think Minneapolis, it was a wonderful place to be. Wonderful place. It was a great town, great people, great fans, great places to play. Very alive. It was a wonderful time to be alive.
Cool.
Yeah.
There was enough places to record as well. How?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you came to start recording the album. Was it a record company came to you and asked you to do it, or how did that come about?
Well, let's see if I can remember. I mean, you're asking tough questions here. We just one day decided to, well, we might as well just go make a hit song.
Yeah.
Let's just go do it. So we went and did it with Dale Minton. I don't know how I got connected up to Dove Recording Studios, which no longer exists out in Bloomington. And we just went out there and It's funny, I don't know, a lot of people probably know Dale. He was from the Gestures. I don't know if you know that.
No.
They had a couple of large hits, Run, 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 and so forth. Anyway, we walked in the studio. I paid the money, and we paid the money, our group did. And Dale says, well, you want to make a hit? I says, yeah, let's make a hit. So we just, within a matter of a couple hours, recorded Mickey's Monkey.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, it just kind of progressed.
Now, why Mickey's Monkey? Because it strikes me that, I mean, what kind, if you had to put a genre label on the stuff that you were doing, what kind of stuff were you doing, and how did that, because Mickey's Monkey is like one of the only tunes not written by you guys that's on the CD, but was it kind of in those days you had to do somebody else's song with a certain flavor to get a hit?
Yeah, in those, to get started, you had to do something.
Right.
I mean, we had no name recognition, no anything. I mean, we had to, like the Moody Blues, I think the first song was what, Go Now, was it, or something? It's very kind of a commercial tune, you know?
Right.
And then they moved into some nice things. And it was a very similar story for us. I guess at that point, we were still, let's be stars, let's be famous, let's get all this rock and roll stuff. And so we, that's where we were at. But we got beyond that pretty quickly.
Why a Holland Dozier Holland song? It's kind of...
I don't know. We were probably playing it at the time, and it was just kind of an arrangement that we had put together, and it was kind of cool and kind of snappy. And actually, to this day, I kind of like that song. You know, what's funny is I never heard it in stereo since the day we recorded it until we tracked down the original tape and Sundays put it on the CD.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd always, I have some 45 copies, but I'd never heard it in stereo before. So
this is Stereo C.A. Quintet, their first recording, Mickey's Monkey, on LSD, KFAI 90.3 and 106.7 FM. Mickey's Monkey from the C.A. Quintet. It's great. I feel like an old 60s DJ now, playing all this stuff and back announcing it. Did you get to go on the radio in the 60s when you put out stuff like that? Was the local radio kind of just reflective of what was happening locally?
Local radio was huge in those days for local musicians. There may have been times when there were 5 or 6 local records in the top 40. This particular one here did make it into the top 10 for quite a few weeks. KQRS, or not KQRS. Can I say other radio stations?
Yes, of course you can.
Oh, okay.
I do it all the time.
I think it was WDGY and KDWB were the principal stations in those days, and local music was big. I mean, they used to have playoffs where they'd take 8 or 10 of the local records released that month, and they'd play them off, and then people would call in and vote on which record was the best. And
do you remember when Money Music was released? Because I think the DJ from KDWB is quoted on the back of that album. Was that
Peter Huntington May?
Right.
He was actually our manager. He was the guy that produced Mickey's Monkey for us.
Wow.
I knew Peter pretty well. Peter was a really cool guy. Peter, yeah, he was a cool guy. He liked Country Joe and the Fish was his favorite album.
Oh man,
Yeah,
I brought some Country Joe the other day because I remember him from back in the day. I hadn't heard him for a long time. That's great.
Peter was a fabulous guy. I'd love to meet him again. I haven't seen him in 30 years. I would love to see him.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where were we going? Oh yeah, we have to actually, appropriately enough, talking of Country Joe and the Fish and Timothy Leary, we started the show off. To me, I mean, I read when I read about the album, it's now termed a legendary psychedelic album. Now, obviously, Mickey's Monkey, I wouldn't call that psychedelic, but
No.
as we'll hear
Well,
later
I don't know.
on,
It depends on how many drugs you've
Right.
had.
well, that's a good point. Let's start there. Can you define psychedelia? I mean, have you thought it's not a psychedelic album, or do you think that's an appropriate description of it?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the ability to duplicate. Boy, that's a tough thing, huh?
Mm.
Mentally duplicate. I mean, you take Mickey's Monkey, you can kind of duplicate the sound in your mind in 1 or 2 passes, and you kind of got it. But if you take something that's psychedelic, and it's kind of strange to use that word, but I mean, you can listen to it 100 times, and you've never really ever duplicated it in your mind. Each time might be a different pass. It sounds a little different, and it's a lot like jazz.
Were you deliberately then striving to get that sound when you were recording? I mean, is that something you had to do deliberately?
We were deliberately trying to make a sound. I don't know exactly if we had any labels on it. I mean, we're just trying to make a sound, something that we liked.
Well, my generation is going to say, when we talk about psychedelic albums, and when we see song titles like Bury Me in a Marijuana Field, we're going to say that something to alter your senses was used during the recording of the album. Is that as an assumption we should jump to, or?
I hate to disappoint a lot of my listeners, or my listeners. I don't have a radio station. Your listeners.
Right.
No, up until that point, I really hadn't done a lot of drugs,
Really?
if any. Most of that was written pretty. Now, I can't speak for the other members, and I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to condemn them or, the other members of the band. But no, up until that point, I had been relatively pretty straight.
So making music wasn't part of, getting high and hanging out with your mates and seeing what happened?
Well, that kind of came after.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't have anything to hide. I mean, I've been pretty clean from drugs for the last 25 years, and not pretty, real clean. Okay,
Right.
with the exception, I do drink a little alcohol from time to time. So now that I've bared my soul there to everyone.
But that wasn't part of the creative process for you
Not
at the time?
Not at that point, no. Not at that point. It could have very well been for some of the other members of the band, but I can't speak for them.
So how do you come around to writing a song called Bury Me in a Marijuana Field? What
Well,
were you
that
trying
was
to say
kind of
there?
written a little bit beyond and after the album, just a little bit towards the later years of the groups. And yeah, no question, but I was... no, wait a minute. Do I still have a chance to be president? No chance whatsoever?
Well, yeah, see, I think it would be perfect because if I got a president who didn't inhale, the next one
Yeah.
has to be one that did inhale.
Well,
so that's
yeah,
cool.
absolutely. I let me just say right here publicly, I did inhale.
Cool.
Excessively. No, it was a period of my life where I got into that, and I don't hide that. I mean, my children and everyone know. But the things that I used to think about, and the things I used to think about doing, and the ideas I had, I couldn't execute them, but now I am executing them. And so I had all these ideas in this period, and now I'm doing them.
Right,
So when I get done doing them, then we'll see what happens.
right.
So.
But at that time, the idea of being buried in a marijuana field seemed like a good idea. Seemed like a
It still
good place
doesn't
to
seem
go.
like a bad idea.
No.
I mean, I can think of worse places to be buried, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. This is the local sound department with Ken Irwin from the C.A. Quintet on KFAI 90.3 and 106.7 FM. Bury me in a marijuana field.
Bury me in a marijuana field. That's where I really long to be. Then I can go out in a blaze of glory with you. Roll a joint up out of me. You can smoke me in your hash pipe. Shoot me intravenously. You wanna be wise, let me fertilize your garden spot, and you roll a joint up out of me. Don't bury me in the graveyard or underneath the old oak tree. I wanna lay beneath the clay until the time when you roll a joint up out of me. When the autumn wind is blowing, the marijuana plants will bend. It's like shoveling snow, the wind will blow those seeds around, and they'll put me back in place again. Bury me in a marijuana field. That's where I really long to be. Then I can go out